I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped through my front door. After 2 weeks of pristine beaches and tropical drinks in Bali, coming home should have felt comforting. Instead, I froze in the entryway, staring at the muddy footprints trailing across my otherwise immaculate hardwood floors. Someone had been in my house. I dropped my suitcase and followed the dirty trail through the living room, noticing my coffee table had been shifted about 6 inches from its usual position. Nothing seemed missing, but everything felt violated. That's when I spotted it, a yellow sticky note attached to my refrigerator door. Routine inspection. Nothing to worry about. It was signed Karen Williams, HOA President, with a smiley face drawn next to her name. My blood ran cold. What routine inspection would justify someone entering my home while I was away? I'd taken every precaution before leaving for vacation. Set timers for the lights to turn on and off at random intervals, stopped my mail delivery, even asked my neighbor Tom to keep an eye on the place. That's what responsible homeowners do in our community. Pinewood Estates was a gated neighborhood with manicured lawns and strict homeowners association rules. Rules I followed meticulously. The monthly fees were steep, but they supposedly guaranteed security and property value protection. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine the HOA president would use her position to enter my home uninvited. I pulled out my phone and called Tom immediately. "Hey, did you notice anyone going into my house while I was gone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No," he replied hesitantly, "but I did see Karen's car parked outside your place a few days ago. I assumed she was dropping off some neighborhood newsletter or something." My security system included cameras at both the front and back entrances. I quickly pulled up the app on my phone and scrolled through the recorded footage. There she was, Karen Williams, in her signature pastel pantsuit, approaching my front door at 2:17 p.m. last Tuesday. She looked around furtively before pulling out what appeared to be a key. My key. She unlocked my door and disappeared inside for nearly 40 minutes. The footage showed her examining my living room, running her finger along shelves checking for dust, rifling through a stack of unopened mail I'd left on the counter, and even opening my refrigerator. She seemed to be taking notes on a clipboard. When she finally left, she had that smug, self-satisfied smile she always wore at HOA meetings when denying someone's request to paint their fence a non-regulation color. I was furious. I drove straight to Karen's house, which wasn't hard to find. It was the one with the perfectly trimmed hedges and a sign in the front yard that read HOA President, as if it were an elected government position. Karen opened the door with that practiced smile of hers, but it faltered when she saw my expression. "Oh, you're back from vacation. How was it?" she asked sweetly, completely ignoring the fact that she'd trespassed in my home. "Why were you in my house, Karen?" I asked directly. She didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "It was just a routine wellness check," she explained with a dismissive wave of her hand. "We do them for all residents who are away for extended periods. It's for your protection, really." Her condescending tone made my skin crawl. Where exactly in the HOA bylaws does it mention these wellness checks? I asked. Karen's smile tightened. It's an unwritten policy. As president, I have certain discretionary powers to ensure community standards are maintained. Something didn't add up. I'd read the HOA agreement thoroughly before purchasing my home. I'm an attorney, after all. There was nothing about entering properties without permission except in case of emergencies like water leaks or fires. I decided to do some digging. Over the next few days, I spoke with other homeowners in the community. What I discovered was disturbing. Several residents admitted they'd returned from trips to find things slightly moved in their homes, but chalked it up to their own forgetfulness. Others had seen Karen prowling around homes when owners were away but were too intimidated to question her. Martin from 3 doors down finally confessed. She came into my house when I was in the hospital last year. Said she needed to make sure I wasn't violating any codes while I was gone. What was I going to do? She's threatened to fine people for having their garbage cans out 10 minutes too long. I compiled all the evidence. My security footage, statements from neighbors, a copy of the HOA bylaws highlighting the absence of any wellness check provision, and documentation of the lockbox where emergency keys were stored, which was only supposed to be accessed in genuine emergencies. I also discovered Karen had been using these unauthorized entries to gather ammunition against homeowners she personally disliked. The day before the monthly HOA meeting, I filed a police report for breaking and entering, and then prepared my presentation for the board. The community center was packed that Thursday evening. Karen sat at the center of the board table, gavel in hand, looking particularly pleased with herself as she called the meeting to order. When it came time for new business, I stood up. I'd like to address a serious security concern regarding unauthorized entry into residents' homes, I announced calmly. Karen's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. I connected my laptop to the projector and played the security footage of her entering my house. The room fell silent. What you're seeing is our HOA president using a key from the emergency lockbox to enter my home without permission while I was on vacation, I explained. This is not only a violation of HOA bylaws but also state law. Karen's face had turned an alarming shade of red. She banged her gavel repeatedly. This is out of order. These wellness checks are for community protection. That's when I played testimony from other homeowners who'd experienced similar invasions. The other board members looked increasingly uncomfortable. There is no wellness check provision in our bylaws, I stated firmly. What there is, however, is a clear statement that emergency keys are only to be used in cases of water leaks, fires, or other emergencies that could damage property. I then gestured toward the back of the room, where 2 police officers had quietly entered. Karen spotted them and stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "I was protecting the integrity of our community. People leave windows open, they forget to turn off appliances, they could have forbidden items that violate our covenants." Her voice had reached a pitch that made several people wince. "So you admit to entering homes without permission to look for violations?" I asked quietly. The room watched in stunned silence as Karen tried to justify her actions. "Someone has to maintain standards around here. Do you know what would happen if I didn't enforce the rules? Property values would plummet. We'd have people painting their houses purple and installing those tacky flamingo lawn ornaments." She was in full meltdown mode now, her carefully cultivated image of authority crumbling with every word. "And you?" She pointed at me accusingly. "Your garbage can was visible from the street last month, and I've seen your blinds don't match the approved color palette." The officers stepped forward as Karen continued her rant. "Mrs. Williams," one of them said firmly, "we need you to come with us. You're being placed under arrest for trespassing, unlawful entry, and abuse of authority." Karen's face shifted from rage to disbelief as the police officer recited her Miranda rights. "This is absurd," she shrieked as they escorted her toward the door. "I'm the HOA president. I have keys to all your homes. Who's going to make sure everyone follows the rules now?" The entire room watched in shock as Karen, the woman who had fined people for having grass half an inch too tall, was led away in handcuffs, still insisting she was just doing her job. One of the remaining board members cleared his throat awkwardly. "I think we should call an emergency election for a new president," he suggested. The motion passed unanimously. 3 months later, Karen's case went to court. The judge was particularly unsympathetic to her claims that HOA authority somehow superseded basic property rights and privacy laws. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison for multiple counts of breaking and entering, plus trespassing charges from over a dozen homeowners who came forward after her arrest. She was also ordered to pay $25,000 in fines and restitution to the affected homeowners. When the sentence was announced, Karen's perfectly maintained facade finally cracked completely. "But who will make sure everyone follows the rules?" she wailed as she was led from the courtroom. "Who will protect our property values now?"